Women and Family Director for East Turkistan National Movement. And this will be our first time having her here to the show at Common Sense America. If you all would please welcome Amannisa. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Common Sense America. It's so nice to meet you. Maria has spoken very highly of you, and I have been watching you on your social channels and just really in awe of what you are doing for preventing crimes against women in China. But first, let's talk about you. Let's talk about how you are the director of the East Turkistan National Movement for Women and Family. How did you get to this point?
So I was born in Kazakhstan, but I come from a pro-independence East Turkestani Uyghur family who was forced to flee East Turkestan and move into Kazakhstan into the 1916 after the Chinese invade and occupied East Turkestan. So my great uncle Yusubek Mukhlis was the leader of East Turkestan independence movement from the 1916 until his death in 2004. And I became involved with the ETNM in the spring of 2019. And then I moved to the United States, where I could freely advocate for the rights of East Turkestani women and children.
What can you talk to me about what is happening to these precious women and children in East Turkestan, and why are they being targeted?
Yes, so the East Turkestan is an occupied country, which has been the homeland of Uyghurs, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and other Turkic people for over 6,000 years. East Turkestani have a history of over 3,000 years statehood dating back to the ancient Indo-European city-states. The People's Republic of China invaded East Turkestan on October 12, 1949, with the support of the Soviet Union. And on December 22nd, 1949, China overthrew the independent East Turkestan Republic and formally occupied it. And since that, China occupied East Turkestan in order to colonize it because of East Turkestan's strategic location, which is in the heart of Asia, and because of its rich natural and minerals resources, because of our location of our country, mostly. Yeah, that's the big reason.
So one of the biggest reasons was because of the location, but why the women, why the children? Why is that such a dominant thing for them to focus on? Because I see, I was looking at the Council on Foreign Relations. They put out an article and I cited it here on the comments section. They talked about the re-education camps. They talked about the abuse of women. They talked about the sterilization of women. They talked about all of these things. Why women? Why such vile crimes on these precious souls?
So the Chinese government and Chinese colonial invaders, they have been committing numerous crimes against East Turkestani women since they occupied our country. And East Turkestani women have been subjected to mass incarceration, like forced labor, rape, and other forms of sexual abuse, forced sterilization, forced abortion, forced marriage, and even the interference with the motherhood. Why women's that? So since the start of Chinese ongoing genocide in East Turkestan in May 2014, a million of Uyghurs, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and other East Turkestani women, they have been sent to the concentration camps and prisons for the sole reason that they're just East Turkestani and not Chinese.
Really? So it's just because they're East Turkestani? Basically, they're part of the Uyghur community. Is that correct?
Yes. And East Turkestani women also have been subjected to the various forms of the physical and psychological torture. in China's camps and prisons, including beating, degradation, debilitation, electric shocks, organ harvesting, among other atrocities. And millions of East Turkestani women have been subjected to forced labor, and hundreds or thousands of young East Turkestani women have been abducted by the Chinese government and sold as a slave labor in Chinese provinces.
So they're sold as slave labor. Where do they end up going? Are they, sent to Shanghai? Are they sent to Beijing? Where are they sent to as they are abducted? What happens to them?
Well, like they probably send them to the other Chinese provinces, or maybe even like to some other countries, because we know how the slave labor works, right?
Right.
And also the millions of East Turkestani women have been like the Chinese government and colonial invaders subject hundreds of thousands of East Turkestani women to rape, including gang rape, as well as all forms of sexual abuse and torture, and even forced prostitution of the young East Turkestani women, the young girls. And the Chinese belongs to that. The Chinese government has sterilized hundreds of thousands of East Turkestani women and abort millions of East Turkestani babies, especially between 1979 and 2009 alone. So over 3.7 million East Turkestani babies were forcibly aborted in that time to prevent the growth of population of East Turkestani peoples. And additionally, 10 of thousands of East Turkestani women are being forced to marry to the Chinese men. It's as a systematic Chinese fascist effort to breed out our nation's existence. So it should be very clear that these so-called forced marriages are nothing less than the state-sponsored rape. They've been forced, and they don't have other choice they don't even have a right to say no.
They have no rights.
No.
What have you been doing as the Women and Family Director for East Turkestan National Movement? What have you been doing to try and stop these abuses and these abortions from happening?
So I'm trying to do as much as I could. That's why I started speaking through our organization about women and children. Especially, I'm also a mother of the 2 kids, and when you becoming a mother, then after that, I think you can feel this pain and the situation much clearly, and closest to your heart than it was before. And it's not just that it's something new. It happens with the Uyghurs since China occupied our country. It's been over 100 years, and I'm trying to speak about more. I'm trying to get the attention from the other organizations, from the governments, speak through my voice, through my voice about the tragedy of the Uyghur women and babies in East Turkestan.
Do you currently, and I was looking at, I'm going to cite this article really quickly, the Council for Foreign Relations, and I tagged it on the show, but they are talking about the numbers, about 11 million Uyghurs, mostly Muslim, Turkic-speaking ethnic group live in northwestern region. The Chinese government has imprisoned more than 1 million people since 2017 and subjected those not detained to intense surveillance, religious restrictions, forced labor, and forced sterilizations. One thing, I'm going to say this to you really quickly as we can, progress through this interview, but the intense surveillances and the religious restrictions that the Chinese government are imposing is very disturbing to me, because you know what it reminds me of? what our current here administration is doing here in the United States. They are constantly having us under surveillance, and they are watching and going into our churches and being very restrictive on what we can and cannot say. And it's coming out more and more. And that's very concerning to me, that what the Chinese government is doing, we, the United States of America, are starting to mirror in that regard. And something you said to the abortions, what was it, 3 million you said, or is that correct? And did I get that number correct?
Yes, it's 3.7 million.
3.7 million abortions. And I live here in the great state of North Carolina. It's known for its tourism. It's known for its military. It's known for being one of those southern states that many people are coming to from the north. But it's also known as a destination abortion state. And I am all about saving the babies. I talk about it all the time. And so hearing that happen over there, and it mirrors yet again that population piece that you talked about, wanting to taking that control of the population, which is very concerning to me. So there's 3 things that run parallel that the United States is continuing to do and what is happening in China. As a mother, as a woman, as a concerned citizen, as one who loves her country and wants to fight for the women and the children, what does that say to you, especially just on a personal journey of what you have been through? What does that say to you?
So what it could say to me, that the mother and the woman in general, we're a very important part of every nation.
Yes.
Because we're raising the kids, we're carrying them for like 9 months under our heart. Yeah.
Yes.
And all experience, all traditions, all values are transferred from us to our children's. And if there's no woman, then there's no future. Especially it's not also comes to the physical, it's comes to the psychological, emotion. What are the China is doing right now with East Turkistani women in the 21st century, the age of information, you can say the public information, right? It's like pure genocide. And I just probably cannot understand those who easily turn a blind eye to this or just ignore this, because the whole nation is dying. Yeah. And what is China trying to do? They're trying to wipe out the whole entire nation, who has their own land, our own history. And the most important that I want to mention, that we're fighting to restore our independence back. And we have every right to do that, because we're not asking for something that doesn't belong to us. We're fighting for our land of our ancestors. And the China is an occupant, which is guest, the guest, like who invaded into the East Turkestan and trying to prove to the world that he's the owner. And I know that there's a lot of injustice happening around the whole world. There's other like bad stuff happening, but the East Turkestani people should also be spoken more about, because we have been ignored for far too long. And I also want to mention that like since 2017, right, like people start to hear about the concentration camps and other stuff what China is doing, but in the reality it's start happening since China occupied us.
So it's been happening a lot longer.
Yes. And I know about that very well, because as I mentioned before, my great uncle used to fight for that issue, which we're continuing right now. And he has a lot of facts and the documents, and I've been reading it and learn and studying it, and he has been mentioning about that even back in that time.
Do you see any type of a response from the United States government for what you are doing with the East Turkistan National Movement? Do you get any type of positive, negative, any type of response?
We are getting a response, obviously. Okay. Yeah, and that's why I also want to, as you ask, I also want to say that we again wanted to ask the international community and also the U.S. government support East Turkestani case against Chinese officials at the International Criminal Court. In light of the fact that China is committing genocide and especially committing crimes against humanity, against children and East Turkestan. And also, I want to ask and call women and children's rights organizations and activists need to break their silence, speak out against China's ongoing war against East Turkestani women and children. Because, yes.
No, well, what can you give me some examples of organizations that are coming alongside of the East Turkestan National Movement to assist with this to fight the genocide?
Well, this is the ETNM and also the East Turkestan government in exile. There's two which, like, I know, and why I'm also joined this organization because they're fighting for what me and my family used to, I didn't try to speak out about that. It's to restore our independence because it's just only one way to give my nation back their rights and their freedom is just to restore our independence. The only way.
When you see leaders of the free world on the national stage talking about fighting for women's rights, how do you perceive that, having lived through and everything that's happening in East Turkestan? What are your thoughts on that?
It really hurts me because it's been years since the media shows up and there's a lot of leaked videos which shows what they're doing, and they just trying to just trying to close their eyes on this situation. And that's why I got you can say a little bit of break because I became a mother. So, but I can't just sit and just not to speak out about that.
Exactly.
Even if I'm start to speak about it alone, but through, you can say that the woman, right? But I will try to do as much as I could to speak to try to make the big leaders and the women and children organizations to speak about that, take some actions to support what is China is doing with the women and Uyghurs and children's in East Turkestan.
Do you receive support from the United Nations on the global stage? What kind of interactions have you had as you fight these crimes against women over there and the children? Have they done anything to work with you to fight this? Or are they merely just saying things, but there's really no action following the words?
Well, at this moment, at my knowledge right now, no. But we're gonna continue talking and asking for them to take some actions and start to speak out about that.
Yeah, I wondered about that because I've heard so many things on the world stage, on the global stage that the United Nations says that they do, but then never follow through on it, especially where they are located and what they aim to do. But it really doesn't, it only makes them try to look good and really does not help the global issues at hand. And that is, what is happening to these women and children. Yeah. Have you seen many come to the United States looking for freedom, looking for healing, looking for health, better health? Have you seen that with your role as the Women and Family Director?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do.
Yes. And how has that been for you as they have been coming through? Has it been on a scale of 1 to 10? Has it been specifically just looking for physical healing, or has it been specifically them looking for homes and just finding all types of sources and things of that nature?
You asking about the here?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so about this question,
so let me rephrase it for you. So women who have gone through this turmoil that you may have come across, what types of things have you been able or trying to do to help them?
Oh, and here in America,
Yes.
about the American women, the Uyghurs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's like the one who came like from the concentration camps and prisons. They're like victims of that.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing, like we're always inviting them to our demonstration to speak about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
If we have some events about
Mm-hmm.
also like about the what happened in East Turkistan, we always call them. They always join us, and we're trying to support them like emotionally, even like to ask them to also join us always to speak
Mm-hmm.
about that more, because they're real victims and they went through what the China is doing there in
Family Director for East Turkistan National Movement. Amannisa, I wanted to let you know, I was sitting here looking on our break. There is a BBC.com article that was connected to the Council for Foreign Relations article. Now, this is dated back in 2021, but I wanted to read just a few minutes, just a few segments from it. It says their goal was to destroy everyone. The Uyghur camp detainees alleged systematic rape. Women in China's re-education camps, and re-education is in quotes, for the Uyghurs have been systematically raped, sexually abused, and tortured, according to detailed new accounts obtained by the BBC. The men always wore masks, said one of the victims, even though there was no pandemic then. They wore suits, she said, not police uniforms. Sometimes after midnight, they came to the cells to select the women they would want and took them down to a corridor to a black room where there was no surveillance cameras. Several nights they took her. Perhaps this is the most unforgettable scar, she said, on her forever. She said, I don't even want these words to spill from my mouth. She was in a forced sterilization. Hearing these stories of these women, it just tears me to pieces, because, we are a child of God. We are a child of the Most High. And hearing these torturous pieces and victimizations and the genocide that's happening to these women and children in East Turkestan because of China wanting to carry on this authoritarian mentality to destroy and to censor and basically population control to what is happening to your East Turkestan people. As a mother and as a woman, your journey, and like you said, you took a couple years to start raising your children. How has that affected you personally? Where does it in the heartstrings? Do you have personal stories of people that it affected them, like this woman who was cited on the BBC article? How does that talk to you? How does that speak to you?
even that I didn't face of that genocide myself. It hurts me a lot, and not only just because of the women's and children's, but also about the men's who also in the concentration camps, forced labor in the prisons, the whole entire East Turkestani nation.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned, that it hurts a lot because like we're not different than the others,
Mm-hmm.
and we should speak about that more. And world leaders and governments and organizations, they must, I'm not like even just asking, but I'm telling that they must to speak about that. They must to take a strong actions, because this is what we will probably be asking from the God after, you know. So why we didn't do anything when they been facing the genocide? And this is right now, this is the world never again moment, you know.
Yes.
It's right now it's happening because the the women, we are the primary caregivers of children's,
Right.
again, right, in every country of the world. And like our voice, our fight, here, East Turkistani woman voice need to be here as well right now, because all we know, like all of us know that if the woman free, healthy from the violence, and then their family will flourish,
Right.
then their kids will be happy, then even the family will be, yeah, the family will be flourish,
Right.
because we're like our role, not even at the nation, but at the family, we're the main role, you know that, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah, so, and
Yes.
this is what the China knows, and this is what they're doing. And also I wanted to mention that the China, they're very you can say very carefully to their Chinese women, you know, like they're even like telling them that they have to deliver more kids, so they do that, the Chinese population will grow up. But to the East Turkestani women, they just killing them psychologically and physically.
I had spent a summer in China teaching English. And I remember being around the young pupils, the young school students, and the girls seemed to have a very secondary demeanor to them, where they were treated as second class, that they were not treated as prized possessions, where the boys were more important than the girls. And I'd noticed that in the little girls that I would teach, that they were very apprehensive, that they weren't confident in who they were. And it was the boys who would always receive the applause, but the girls were always just very secondary and in the background. And it always made me think about just that time that I had there in China, and really, and just being amongst these precious students, but also just thinking about those little girls who'd end up becoming young women, and how they would be in their society, and how they saw themselves. And so the reason why I bring that up is I'm just really grateful for what you are doing to fight for these women, fight for these children, who are at the hands of these dictators, of these authoritarians, and who are, giving them a livelihood, giving them a hope and a future. And I really appreciate that in you. And, I'm honored to have you on this show. I know this is one of your first interviews, and also having you here at Common Sense America. Our audience is so focused on the moms, focused on the kitchen table discussions, because so much happens at that kitchen table when we're sitting around the table with our families. Such great decisions are made. Love is brought to the table. So many different discussions happen. There's so much power in the home, especially when the mother, as my mom would say, it's the mother is in charge here. And it is true. So I want to continue to hear your voice, hear your story, hear the success, and also hear about other organizations on the faith and global stage that are going to come alongside of you to fight for the lives of these unborn children, the children that are, looking for hope, and also those mamas who are, and those women that are really seeking to have freedom. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. show.
Sure. Can you share with our audience where we can continue to follow you? And I know you're on Instagram, but are there any other spots that we can follow you, or any upcoming events that we should be looking for?
Yeah, so our next upcoming event should be the July 5th.
Okay.
It's also the commemorate of one of our uprising days. You can also follow me on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I will send you the link.
Yeah, that'd be great. Send me the link, and then I'm going to post your reel today, and I'll tag you in it up there, and so we can get your voice out there for what you are doing for the Uyghur women and children. So, Amannisa, I love your name. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, thank you so much for being here at Common Sense America. Wishing you a wonderful Tuesday, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you so much to having me today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Have a great rest of your day. We will see you soon.